Welcome along to my very new YouTube channel called Analista de la Liga. Obviously, it's about Spanish football. I'm going to be looking at everything that's going on in La Liga on a weekly basis. I watch all 10 games every week. I've done for 18 years now. It's become my job. One I'm very lucky to do and thoroughly enjoy. As I say, I'm going to be doing all the stuff on La Liga on a weekly basis. But this season, I'm going to be looking at teams and also focusing on Premier League clubs that are facing Spanish opposition in European competition, just to give those fans a guide to how those teams are doing, how they've been doing this season, bit of team news, bit of background, a little bit of insight on how they play. And in this edition, I'm going to be looking at Newcastle United's opponents, Barcelona. And it's a guide for Newcastle fans who obviously know an awful lot about Barcelona, but you haven't seen all their games this season. You don't know who's injured, who's fit, who's playing well, who's not. So a little bit of background for the Newcastle fans that are going to be obviously looking forward to the game on Thursday evening. And hopefully I can provide that. Now, what are Barcelona this season? Pretty much the same as last season, I have to say. Started the season off in fine form with the 5-0 win at Mallorca. They were helped by the fact Mallorca had 2 players sent off in the first half. They then were 2-0 down away from home against Levante. And both of those goals that Levante scored were due to this ridiculously high line that Barcelona play defensively. So they were trying to play offside around the halfway line. It didn't work. Levante got through, scored 2 goals, newly promoted Levante as well. So a shock was on the cards. But Hansi Flick made a couple of changes at half-time. They scored 2 quick goals and then got a winner in the last minute. Slightly fortunate, it was an own goal. So they did win that game. And the game, I think, which is of interest to Newcastle fans is the game away from home against Rayo Vallecano. The Rayo Vallecano are managed by a guy called Inigo Perez, who was a teammate of Andoni Iraola. So they both played under Marcelo Bielsa at Athletic Bilbao. Inigo Perez was an assistant manager to Andoni Iraola at Rayo Vallecano. And then he went to Bournemouth with Iraola, but couldn't get a work permit. So the job vacancy came up back at Rayo Vallecano, where they've both done really well. He got the job. They qualified for European football last season in 8th place. And the reason I'm saying this and telling you this story as a bit of background is that Rayo Vallecano play exactly like Bournemouth. And you can see that Iraola, Inigo Perez, they're both work and in exactly the same manner. And that manner is playing with players that run hard, run fast, are well organised. They're very courageous. They're a brave team. Bournemouth, Rayo Vallecano, very, very similar. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I think that's the way for Newcastle to play against Barcelona. Last weekend, Valencia came to play away from home against Barcelona. They played a back 5, they played a midfield 4, and they played one centre-forward called Hugo Duro, 30, 40 metres away from the rest of his team. You think that Barcelona would find it hard to break through? They don't, because if there's no attacks coming the other way, they flood the attacking half of the pitch with their players, the fullbacks players, wingers, the wingers players inside forwards. They play a number 10, the 2 centre midfield players are playing in the attacking half of the pitch constantly, looking to get into the final third. And it plays into the hands of Barcelona. There was no threat coming the other way. It ended up 6-0. It could have been 10, in all honesty. So Valencia played positional defensively. They were passive. They weren't aggressive. And that's the blueprint of how not to play against this Barcelona. So I think Newcastle and Eddie Howe will look at the Rayo Vallecano version and think, do you know what, Rayo Vallecano, and they do it on a regular, consistent basis. They give Barcelona problems because they play with courage. They fight fire with fire. They do play defensively at times, but they have always got a threat on the counter-attack. And I firmly believe Newcastle can replicate that. You know, they've got a solid back 4. The defensive record is really good. The midfield trio, Gimares, Tonali, Joelinton, they'll be playing against 2. One of them might have to keep a little bit of an eye out on the number 10 position for Barcelona. But at 3 against 2, De Jong plays deeper. Pedri's a genius, by the way. Lamine Yamal gets all the headlines. Rafinha gets his fair share of headlines as well. My opinion, the best player for Barcelona is Pedri. If the result goes your way, Newcastle, I'm pretty sure you'll sit back and go and enjoy the performance of Pedri. He's a genius. He's reaching Xavi in the levels. He's reaching levels where it's a waste of time closing him down. Doesn't give the ball away. At times you think he's under pressure here. What's he going to do? He's got a trick. He drops his shoulder, or he plays it first time and he's out of trouble. Absolutely sensational footballer. Now, the midfield three of Newcastle, physically, they can be aggressive. They can compete against the young Pedri. I've no doubt about that whatsoever. The wide players of Newcastle, the attacking players, don't do a Valencia, don't sit back, don't play just in front of the fullbacks and never look to break forward. They have to, and Newcastle got the players with the pace, Barnes and Gordon, Murphy and Elanga. They can cause problems going the other way. Now, I'm not saying leave them up the pitch because that's impossible. But they've got to be in position, ready to spring those attacks, ready to pounce, make runs from deep. Barcelona will look to play offside around the halfway line, just around the halfway line. So if you can get runs from deep, if one of those midfielders can break forward from a deeper position, if the wide players can make sure they're in an onside position and make those runs from deep, I promise you, you will get in on goal. Now, the centre forward has a big role to play, just don't get caught offside. So if that means don't make runs in behind, and if you're Voltemada, look for the ball to feet. Let your wide players make those runs in behind. At times it's impossible for a centre forward playing against Barcelona to keep onside. I think we saw it with Kylian Mbappe last year. He was as quick as you like. And he was offside 8 times in one game against Barcelona. And it looked like he was through and goal 4 or 5 times. They were all offside. And so I think it's important the centre forward stays onside. The wide players attacking behind. A midfield runner, if you've got the opportunity to break forward from deep, you should be in that onside position. And that's for me, I think that's the blueprint that Inigo Perez at Rayo Vallecano does. And I think it's one that Newcastle will look to replicate. I think, as I said, if you sit back like Valencia, you play deep, you're just asking for trouble. Injury issues for Barcelona. Lewandowski has been injured at the start of the season. Ferran Torres has been playing up front and been absolutely brilliant. To the extent Lewandowski is now fit, he's been on the bench. He came on at the weekend. Ferran Torres was playing well. Barcelona were playing well. They were running show. They were in complete control. Lewandowski came on because there's pressure on his place now. He scored 2 goals. So I think with no Lamine Yamal, and that's a blow, you'd want to see him play. But in terms of getting a result, it helps there's no Lamine Yamal playing against Newcastle. So I think Ferran Torres will probably move into a wider position, probably on the right, because Rafinha will go on the left. Rafinha missed the first half of the weekend. Allegedly, he was late for a team meeting on the day of the game. And effectively, it was a half a game suspension. So he was subbing in the first half, came on at half-time. He scored 2 goals. So I think Lewandowski starts up front. I think Ferran Torres starts on the right, Rafinha on the left. Rashford probably on the bench, although he started at the weekend and was getting better and better as the game went on. Number 10's a little bit of an iffy position for Barcelona. I want to say iffy, a choice of riches, to be honest. Dani Olmo is having a slow start to the season. I think he's the number 1 choice at number 10. And in his place at the weekend, I think Hansi Flick had a view of, do you know what, I'm going to give Dani Olmo a rest because he's a little bit injury prone. I'm going to play Fermin Lopez in this game, Dani Olmo, on Thursday against Newcastle. And what happened, Fermin Lopez was the star of the show, scored 2 wonderful goals early in the game as well, not when they were 5-0 up and 4-0 up. And it's impossible to drop him for this game. Will he? Possibly. He might stick to his original plan of playing Fermin against Valencia, Fermin Lopez and Dani Olmo against Newcastle. But it'd be hard push to drop him. He was brilliant at the weekend in the number 10 position. Left back is a problem for Barcelona as well. No, Alejandro Balde. He's picked up a hamstring injury. Gerard Martin has come in to replace him. He's solid. He's dependable. He's not Alejandro Balde. He's not as quick. He's not as good attacking wise. And he's not as good defensively. 1 or 2 issues last season that cost them games because of Gerard Martin playing in the left back position, notably against Inter Milan in the 2 legs that he played, can be a weakness. So doesn't carry the threat going forward, isn't as good defensively. That might be down the right flank for Newcastle, someone like Anthony Elanga, Jacob Murphy. That could really be a place where Newcastle see some joy. Jules Koundé down the other side, the usual right back, quick, gets forward, good defensively. But left back might be a little bit of a problem here for Barcelona. And it might be that the area where Newcastle gets some success. So I think it's that's the blueprint, in my opinion, how to play against Barcelona. I'm sure lots of other teams look at it and think exactly the same and don't have success, but it's worth a go. As I say, it should be a wonderful evening for the Newcastle fans. Can you replicate that famous victory from almost 28 years ago to the day? Is there an Asprilla in the ranks and can get another hat-trick and be a cult hero? It's possible. It's going to be tough. It's a game to enjoy. Qualifying for the Champions League, getting Barcelona at home in the first game is a match I'm sure you'll be looking forward to. Enjoy the evening.